Most people, correct me if I'm wrong, most people think they have control over how they view the world. But almost certainly, you don't have control over how you view the world. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think modern day people give really any honest thought to their worldview, even though they're all too eager to say their ideological opponent is in an echo chamber. Hey, what do you know? What I want to talk about today is very important. It's something I contemplate day in and day out, trying to solidify my answer to the problem. I can't promise this message will give you a solid reply to the big question, but knowing the question exists and knowing you don't have an answer to it is vital. What does the word worldview mean to you? Who you're voting for, what team you support, what movies you watch? Oh, it's something so much more. Have you ever watched someone figure out a math problem and they do it in some really weird way? Or have you ever thought about if people see the same red that you do? Even closer to worldview, the way that Eastern cultures are said to look at the context of a painting before the subject, and vice versa for Westerners. Hold on to those ideas for later. Worldview, Weltanschauung, is the framework through which you see the world. To draw a diagram, let's make two things, the world and you. The world is casting rays at you, and these rays represent all information. The ray's meaning is determined once it hits you, and reflects in a fashion fitting that meaning. Before this information reaches you, though, it goes through filters. You can imagine these filters like the different colored lenses on Benjamin Franklin's bifocals in National Treasure. These filters are applied by various things. Your sensing organs, how you feel at the time, memories of what you've been told about certain things, etc. Depending on what type of information it is, different filters will apply. Worldview, though, is the very last filter the information goes through, the filter closest to your eye. It is the last thing that manipulates information before it reaches your experience. The effect of these filters can be to maybe block certain aspects of the information, maybe twist some of it, maybe apply a positive opinion to it or a negative outlook on it, stuff like that. Based on this description, I would like to identify a few real-world examples of worldviews. What are we looking for? Something that checks these three boxes. 1, that this is the foundational belief that all the other beliefs this person holds are built on. 2, it's the framework through which the world is understood by this person. And 3, it points to the most important thing to that person. What would be the most obvious first candidate? What do you think? Religion? Okay, let's try it on for size. Islam, Christianity, and Taoism, for example. Think about if these were the only filters a person had, if they were a shot array of information. Rays of information can be so many things. Even something so simple as the weather being too warm for your liking is something that is filtered through your worldview. If these 3 imaginary one-filter people were walking around one day and it was 90 degrees out, they might feel different ways. Here are their internal monologues. The Muslim and the Christian might think, this is uncomfortable, but discomfort is a product of the fallen world we live in and part of God's plan. What matters is how I respond to it. The Taoist might say, my body is telling me I'm uncomfortable, but my body should be in tune with the environment around it. If I were in harmony with nature, it would be fine. Interesting. What about if they saw a person claim to be a good person? The Muslim or the Taoist might think, there are certain things that you do that are right, and it takes a lot of work to be good. It is possible to reap rewards of an afterlife through one's own virtue, and men have done so before. However, humbleness is a virtue that this person doesn't seem to have, as they're bragging right in front of me. And then the Christian might think, only once in history has a man been good enough by his own virtue to be given access to good after death. Any other person can only hope to share in the one man's perfection. And if you're wondering why I bring up the afterlife as soon as morals are involved, this is just another prompter to get you thinking in this way. Now, as far as these 3 ideologies, do they check all 3 of the boxes of being a worldview? Conditionally. Why conditionally? Think about it. There are people who have these filters, Christians with Christian filters, but until it is the nearest to them, it is not their worldview. Although, of course, I think every single one of these, if followed correctly, is a worldview. So if one of these 3 imaginary people were each of these things. They were Muslim, they were Christian, they were Taoist, but it wasn't their worldview, then what else would be their worldview? It's an interesting question, but part of this is about being conscious of your beliefs, of your worldview. Whether you're someone who subscribes to a system similar to the three provided or not, think about what really fills that slot of your last filter, your worldview. If you don't, you're letting others manipulate you. But you might say, you're letting Taoism control you if you're a Taoist. But I say, you are being influenced by some pane of glass that is your worldview, whether you like it or not. It is a fact of nature that our perceptions are altered by what gates they pass through in our faculties. It is your responsibility to first, make sure you know what glass you're looking through, and second, make sure it's the cleanest and clearest of the bunch. If you say that you have a neutral worldview or a purely rationalistic or a purely logical worldview, you're just blind to whatever is really there. You're not above somebody else who professes a worldview. Anyway, if one of the hypothetical religious gentlemen did not, in fact, have their religion as their worldview, then what other framework is laying behind it? Just for fun, I would like us to take a leap into the fictional past. Once upon a time, thousands of years ago, there was a woman named Cyrene. She lived in the forests of what we call Siberia, but she called it Baranoisk. Her tribe wandered, hunting deer. She understood life in terms of seasons, hunts, and keeping good standing with her own community. Her life was about survival, so that's the way she thought about things. When an input of information occurred, she related it to that context every time. Her worldview is simply what works for her and her community. Her concept of the world is formulated by her and her people's observations. Throughout history, many situations such as this have grown worldviews out of personal experiences and thought processes. As humans communed in larger and larger groups, these ideas clashed and traded, although they didn't necessarily have a name. Some windows shattered in this trading of ideas, but some were added to stacks of windows. Some better worldviews replaced less useful ones, and conversely, some cloudier windows replaced clearer ones. Where am I going with this? Well, it's that the answer to true worldviews hidden underneath professed worldviews is messy. And the hidden worldview doesn't always have a name, and it can't always be classified so cleanly. Another thought experiment, just really quick. Think about how an ancient Roman viewed the world, even with their pantheon of gods. Is it in truth closer to that of a theist or an atheist? Go through fake situations in your head. Think about reactions to life events. Think about perception of self. Personally, I think polytheism is shown through application to be closer to atheism than monotheism. Another thing to think about, what worldview would someone come up with if they had zero outside information? Is the human mind just the brain and only a manipulator of information? Or is there information in that our consciousness manipulates information by which a worldview might be formulated? Or is there information created by our minds independently by which a worldview might be formulated? I don't know. Back to the beginning. Whatever your worldview, it has to explain everything. It has to apply everywhere. Otherwise, you have a pair of glasses that doesn't work. I'd like to bring up 3 great phenomena and challenge you to think if your worldview encapsulates the concepts in full. Morality, logic, and beauty. Think about, just for a minute, think about the significance of these 3 things. These are 3 parts of the human experience, and they can all sort of be explained independently with certain popular ideologies today. But together, the test of an ideology is much greater to explain all 3. Thus, many philosophers often deny one or another of these concepts or others in order to make their ideology work. But this is cheating because these concepts are real. As I begin to wrap up, I would like to plant 2 more seeds of thought in your head. The first is another allegory. Too often we get caught up in the dashboard metrics of life, like a student driver staring at the speedometer instead of the horizon. It's a preoccupation that keeps us from seeing where we're actually headed. But here's the thing. You're operating within a worldview whether you've picked one out or not. And whether you like it or not, you're in a car careening down the highway at 90 miles an hour. Since nature dictates that we must look at reality through some kind of filter, your only real choice is whether to be a passive observer or an active curator of that pane of glass. Confounded to talk about cultural subversion, but people are all too willing to switch your worldview for theirs while you're not looking. The last thing I want to say is this. We live in a magnificent universe full of wonder and glory. No matter who you disagree with, there is no end to the greatness that is around us. Everyone is trying to convince you, including me, but until every human on planet Earth agrees, be in awe of how fascinating nature, people, mathematics, history, music, poetry, art, humor. Think about how incredible all of these things are. It's a funny thing, this world we live in. And I think it's really cool. But that's just me.